Welcome back to The Explainer. We're throwing out the standard agenda today, skipping all the usual pleasantries and jumping straight into the pulse-pounding world of a high-stakes, true crime digital heist. We're going to use one of the most audacious cyber attacks in human history to unpack the fundamental rules of information security. So, if you've ever wondered how digital bank vaults are actually cracked and what keeps our entire global financial system from just completely collapsing, well, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. $1 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's a 1 with 9 zeros. This isn't some Hollywood movie script. That was the potential total impact of a brazen cyber attack that went down in February of 2016. This was the target payout for the perpetrators behind the infamous Bangladesh bank hack. It represents a scale of theft that is honestly almost impossible to wrap your head around, and it fundamentally shook the bedrock of global financial trust. So here's how it actually went down. In February 2016, hackers didn't bust in using ski masks and getaway cars. They used something way more powerful. They used stolen SWIFT credentials belonging to actual Bangladesh central bank employees. Armed with these credentials, they basically just digitally walked right through the front door. They sent more than 3 dozen fraudulent money transfer requests straight to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, instructing them to funnel millions of the Bangladesh bank's funds to accounts scattered across the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and other parts of Asia. It was completely silent. It was incredibly fast, and it was devastatingly effective. But how does something like that actually happen? I mean, what exactly is being broken here? To understand that, we have to look at the NIST FIPS 199 standard. It defines the absolute foundation of computer security, which is known as the CIA triad. The C stands for confidentiality. This means preserving authorized restrictions on information access and disclosure, basically keeping secrets secret. A loss of confidentiality is an unauthorized disclosure of information. In the case of this SWIFT hack, the exact moment the hackers accessed those private employee credentials, confidentiality was totally shattered. The digital keys to the kingdom were out in the open. Right, so that brings us to the I in the triad, integrity. This is all about guarding against improper information modification or destruction. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what went wrong next in our heist. When the hackers used those stolen credentials to generate over 36 fake money transfer requests, they weren't just looking at private data anymore. They were actually altering the reality of the bank's ledger. They were authorizing massive transfers of wealth that were entirely fraudulent. The system trusted the inputs because the credentials technically looked valid, which meant the fundamental integrity of the data being processed was fatally compromised. Finally, to round out the trio, we have the A, availability. This ensures timely and reliable access to and use of information. Basically, a system has to actually work promptly, and service can't be denied to authorized users. If a system is locked down, if it's crashed, or if it's just otherwise inaccessible, it has lost availability. Now, while the Bangladesh bank hackers were primarily exploiting confidentiality and integrity to steal funds, attacks on availability, which we're going to look at in just a minute, can bring entire global infrastructures to their knees in literally a matter of seconds. Let's pivot for a second and see how these 3 pillars create a blueprint for attackers. To pull off a heist, hackers have to find a crack in the armor. They target specific attack surfaces, especially in banking systems. The first one is the user terminal and the user themselves. This means targeting the actual computer you sit at, or even your actions, like physically stealing a smart card or peeking over your shoulder to observe a PIN. The second surface is the communications channel, which are the actual network links carrying the data between you and the bank. And the third is the internet banking server itself, the heavy machinery hosting the application. Hackers constantly probe all 3 of these surfaces, just looking for a single weak link. Now, what's really fascinating is mapping the specific strategies attackers use against these very surfaces. You've got user credential compromise, which echoes exactly what we saw in the SWIFT hack. This involves procedural attacks, sniffing network data, or using social engineering to just outright steal valid logins. Then there's user credential guessing, where hackers use massive networks of zombie PCs to launch brute force attacks, just rapidly guessing usernames and passwords until they get in. Or they might use the injection of commands strategy, where they intercept that communication channel to impersonate a valid user and completely bypass the normal security checks. It's this constant, ever-evolving chess match. So a crucial point here is understanding the massive difference in scale. We all deal with personal security every day, right? Protecting our social media passwords, being careful with our online banking. It's totally vital for us as individuals to function in modern society. But contrast that with organizational security. For massive businesses and governments, IT isn't just a tool, it's the core enabler of everything they do. A breach doesn't just mean a locked Facebook account, it means a billion-dollar Swift heist. Because the stakes are so high, organizations have to focus heavily on strict compliance, rigid governance, and maintaining massive internal security standards just to protect their entire ecosystem. To really grasp how intense that organizational defense gets, just look at the payment card industry, or PCI, security standards. This is way beyond picking a strong password with a special character in it. This is a rigorous compliance framework required to optimize security across the entire ecosystem of credit and debit card transactions. It covers everyone: the manufacturers building the physical PIN devices, the software developers writing the payment applications, and the merchants processing the data. It's a massive, highly coordinated defense grid intended to protect cardholders against the misuse of their personal information at every single touchpoint. But even with all these rigorous standards in place, gaps happen. And that brings us to the concept of an exploit. An exploit is basically a program or a piece of code that takes advantage of a security hole, a vulnerability in an application or a system, allowing an attacker to use it for their own benefit. And here is the truly wild part. Major vendors like Microsoft, Oracle, and Cisco actually publish their security vulnerabilities online when they issue fixes. So, if an organization is slow to apply those fixes, attackers simply read the patch notes, reverse engineer the vulnerability, and launch remote exploits over the network to break right in. And what happens when those massive organizational defenses fail and a remote exploit is unleashed in the wild? You get catastrophic headlines. Back in 2017, the UK's National Health Service was hit by what was dubbed the biggest ransomware outbreak in history. This wasn't a silent, sneaky theft of confidentiality like the Swift hack. This was a catastrophic assault on availability. Critical health systems shut down, surgeries were canceled, and actual ambulances had to be diverted. We're talking 75,000 attacks spread across 99 countries. Imagine powering on your work computer at a hospital, and instead of your desktop, a giant countdown timer is just staring back at you. That was the terrifying reality for these victims. The wanted crypto ransomware demanding payment in Bitcoin to unlock their own files. It's completely chilling, right? This brilliantly illustrates that a compromised organizational network is really just a scaled-up, weaponized version of a personal security failure. Someone, somewhere along the line, left a digital door unlocked. An unpatched vulnerability allowed an exploit to run wild, encrypting vital files and completely destroying the system's availability until a ransom was paid. Which brings us to perhaps the absolute most important takeaway from our source material when it comes to best practices. The risk of implementing the service pack, hotfix, and security patch should always be less than the risk of not implementing it. Now yes, updating enterprise systems is tedious. Yes, patches can occasionally cause a temporary software glitch. But as we've seen with the Bangladesh Bank and the NHS, the risk of doing nothing, the risk of leaving a known vulnerability open for attackers to exploit, can literally cost billions of dollars or shut down entire hospital networks. Proactive defense isn't just a good idea, it is non-negotiable. We've journeyed all the way from the staggering, almost unbelievable scale of a billion-dollar Swift heist to the foundational pillars of the CIA triad, and finally to the devastating reality of unpatched exploits locking down global healthcare. It all comes down to maintaining those defenses, from our personal laptops right on up to global banking servers. So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over today. If a vulnerability is really just a digital unlocked door, are you leaving yours open for the next billion-dollar heist? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your systems patched, stay curious, and I will see you next time.